We spent a lot of time on the debate back and forth between the Kesef Mishna and the Ramach. And if you have page 2 of these pages, we're up to what's called 4 Aleph, which is the Beit Yosef. And the Beit Yosef of Rav Yosef Karo has 2 additions, 2 contributions to this sugya. One, he records in Yeridea, and another in Choshe Mishpat. The focus of our attention is mostly on the Rambam Shita. And we'll soon see the Rambam inside, which is on page 3, number 6 Aleph. So you might want to have open in front of you both page 2, 4 Aleph, and page 6, and page 3, 6 Aleph. And there are 2 Rambams, the most important of which is probably the Rambam Hilchos Rotzeach. For tonight's shir, for last Tuesday night's shir, the most important Rambam was in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. And the last question that we addressed last week, I just want to pick up from there, so we can start with a clean slate, so to speak, is we have a principle established by the Talmud that in a machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. And yet, the Rambam in Yesodei HaTorah, Perek Hei Halacha Hei, paskins like Reish Lakish, which means that even in a case of Yichduhu, where the Goyim threaten, if you don't give us so-and-so, we'll wipe you off, we cannot give up so-and-so unless he is Chayiv Misa in Bezdin, like Sheva ben Bichri. And that psak of the Rambam is based on the Shita Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan holds that once it's Yichduhu, and they gave you 2 choices, either give us so-and-so, we'll kill him, or we'll destroy the entire city. In that case, Rabbi Yochanan would allow you to give up so-and-so who was selected and earmarked by the Anosim in order to save the city, because this person himself would die together with the rest of the city. But the Rambam insists on adding the condition of Reish Lakish that he's got to be Chayiv Misa K'Sheva ben Bichri. What compelled the Rambam to paskin like Reish Lakish?
Sorry, just one point. The Chayiv of Misa, according to Yidden, is that if you kill a guy, you're not Chayiv Misa. But it can't be that, right? I mean, if he killed one of the Goyim, murdered, whatever.
No, I think this is a case where there's an overlap between what's called Mored b'Malchus Yisrael and Mored b'Malchus HaGoyim. Do you follow what I mean? He was targeted to die by both the Jewish court and the non-Jewish court. In event that he's only targeted to die by the non-Jewish court, that has no halachic significance whatsoever. So Reish Lakish is talking about a scenario and allows you to give up someone because the following 2 conditions have been fulfilled. They want him, and he is condemned to death, both by Jewish law and by non-Jewish law. Says the Kesef Mishna, the Rambam was compelled to paskin like Reish Lakish against Rabbi Yochanan. And by the way, he tries to pull a fast one on us and say Safek Nefashos L'Hachmir, which we can't swallow at all. So I'm not even going to go down that line, because what do you mean Safek Nefashos L'Hachmir? You don't want to kill him, I understand, but he's going to die anyway together with the whole city. So you could hardly apply the principle of Safek Nefashos L'Hakil. But, says the Kesef Mishnah, the Rambam found not only one Yerushalmi to support Reish Lakish, but an entirely different Yerushalmi. And we know, by the way, the Ram is very influenced by the Yerushalmi, as a general rule. The one Yerushalmi is the Yerushalmi that we spent a lot of time on in Trumos, where the Gemara says that if they earmarked one particular Jew, and he was Chayav Misa Kesheva ben Bichri, then you're allowed to give him up and save the city. According to Reish Lakish, it's very difficult. Why did the Yerushalmi bother introducing Sheva ben Bichri? It only confuses our minds. According to Rabbi Yochanan, that whole addition comes under the klal of Kol HaMosif Goreah. They were adding something that instead of clarifying, it makes things a lot more complicated. Don't introduce Sheva ben Bichri. Leave it at Yichdu. And therefore, the Rambam was compelled to paskin like Reish Lakish, because the Yerushalmi apparently accepted the principle of Reish Lakish that we can only give him up because he was Chayav Misa Kesheva ben Bichri. Second Yerushalmi. And this is an entirely different discussion in the Yerushalmi about somebody by the name of Ula Bar Kisri. Now, don't get confused. There was a great Amora, Ula, but we're not talking about him. Far from it. Anyway, the Malchus wanted him dead or alive. This Ula Bar Kisri was guilty in the Roman government's eyes of every last condemnation and has to be put to death. Ula Bar Kisri is a very fast runner. And before they could get to him, the Goyim, he went to the city of Lud. And that's the hometown of none other than Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. And you may remember that we touched on this last time. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was the Gadol Adar, and he requests asylum for Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. The government catches up to him, surrounds the entire town, and threatens to kill the entire town if we don't fork over Ula Bar Kisri. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi paskins, first he tries to be mafayis them, and then he sees it's not going anywhere, and he gives them over Ula Bar Kisri. And we can imagine what happened to Ula Bar Kisri all of a sudden. Yerushalmi goes on to tell us that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi had a constant guest. They were chummy, and that was none other than Eliyahu HaNavi. And after this episode, Eliyahu HaNavi ceased to show up in company with Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. The Yerushalmi tells us that after fasting, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi fasted many, many fasts, and finally Eliyahu reveals himself to him and asks him the following question: Ula misoros ani nigla? Should I reveal myself to someone who's a moser, who gives up a Jew for death? To which Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi responds, V'lav Mishna sisi? Mishnah means halacha. Didn't I fulfill the halacha? They asked for so-and-so, and I gave him up to save the city. In Yiddish, we would say, Was wilter for my Leben? What do you want for my life? Amalei, so that a good question deserves another good question. Eliyahu HaNavi asks him, V'zeu Mishnas Chasidim? Yes, you might be right, Mikra Din. You are permitted to give up Ula Bar Kisri, but that's not the way Hasidim, pious people, should be acting. You're on a high level. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was the great pious person of his generation. I remember the Gemara Kesubas describes that after he died, a pillar of fire went up from his kever to show that he was the greatest in his generation. you don't need the Rambam to draw the conclusion that not only does Yerushalmi require Yichdu, but even if he was Chayiv Misa, Lav Mishnas Chachamim, you may be technically permitted to give him up in those circumstances based on Reish Lakish. But nevertheless, you shouldn't have done so. And this is how the Rambam paskins in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. And for that,
excuse me, I have a question.
Yeah,
I may.
I'll just finish up one thing, Moshe, so I don't want to lose my trend. The Rambam paskins on the bottom of page 1, we'll go back, that Amru lahem ovdei kochavim tnu lanu echad mikem v'nargenu v'im lav naro kulchem yehargu kulam v'al yimsu lehem nefesh achas biso v'im yichdu lahem v'yamru tnu lanu ploni o naroges kulchem im hayu mechuyev misa kishev ben bichri yitnu oso lehem v'ein morim lehem kein lechatchil v'im eino chayev misa yehargu kulam Vel Yimsu Lehem Nefesh Achas Mi Yisrael, the Rambam in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. Yeah, Moshe.
I understand if this is the halacha, but if they're saying that this is a lifnim reshus hadin, then how can a lifnim reshus hadin weigh against killing all these people who, according to the whole city, which according to Medina, shouldn't have died. In
So
other
Moshe
words,
comes
I can
out,
see going to the Chumrah, and but in this case, the Chumrah boomerangs back is going to kill a whole city.
Right.
Versteh nicht.
It comes out like this, Moshe. Every Horas Bezdin can be broken up into 2 segments. There's Ikar Adin, and there's Lifnim Mishras Hadin. But keep in mind 2 points. Point number 1, that Lifnim Mishras Hadin is also mandated by the Torah. It's not that Lifnim Mishras Hadin is kind of like, a joker card. You want to take advantage of Lifnim Mishras Hadin, you want to establish yourself as a chassid, go ahead and do so. The Gemara derives Lifnim Mishras Hadin from the pasuk V'asisa Yoshev Atov. So sometimes, and I admit it's rare, there's a collision between Ikar Adin and Lifnim Mishras Hadin. Point number 2. What do we do in such a case? How do we reconcile the Achras Halacha in such a head-on collision? And I believe the answer is the theory of Einstein, the theory of relativity. There is no objective standard. On one level, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi did what was halachically mandated and correct. As you say, why should the city be destroyed? But nevertheless, keep in mind that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is setting up a standard through his Horas Hadin for generations upon generations to come. And on a relative or subjective level, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was required by the halacha to implement the second dimension of halacha, which is called Midas HaChasidus. The Rambam takes this one step further. And Moshe, here I think your question is excellent. And if not for the Rambam, I never would have said it. The Rambam, in the aftermath of this Yerushalmi, applies a different principle entirely. And that is halacha ve'ein morin ke. Normally, Halacha ve'ein morike works in the reverse. It tells me that even though you're allowed to take the law into your hands and you can destroy life according to the strict letter of the law, but ain't morinkein. It's too dangerous to allow you carte blanche, what we call kanoim poging. Again, I'm not going into the sugi of Pinchas and Zimri, but you know what I mean, just on a superficial level. But the power of halacha ve'ein morinkein is not a relative power. It's a separate principle in Horas halacha, that ein morinkein. There are certain halachas that we will not allow the Mora Hora to paskin. And I don't know why the Rama made that extra jump. But if not for the Rambam, I would have introduced Midas Chasidus. When the leader of the Jewish people is setting the standards for generations to come, there's something called Midas Chasidus. And Moshe, I'll be honest with you, and you'll have to fault me for this because I deserve to be tarred and feathered. Honestly, what I'm about to say, I should shut off the computer here. With the hostages, I would apply the principle of Midas Chasidus. And my heart is for the benefit of all Klal Yisrael. And we're in a battle for the salvation of Klal Yisrael. And it starts with Hamas. It'll go on to Hezbollah, I'm afraid. And who knows where it's going. Okay, let's go on, only because...
Sorry, I'll from a slightly different angle. If a person is pursued by Goyim, the Goyim will eventually get them. Is that person not called a Bar Katala? If you kill a Bar Katala, then you're not Chayav Misa, right?
Correct. But even in the case of a Bar Katala, the Gemara applies the principle of Midas Chasidus.
Right,
certain things we can't do. We can't destroy a tunnel because there might be hostages in the tunnel. You understand what I'm saying?
Right. But if someone decided in the city to just kill that guy because he'll save the whole city, he wouldn't be Chayav Misa.
Yeah, now, Davido, I think the Rambam took this Gemara in Yerushalmi, according to Kesef Mishna, one step further. The Yerushalmi doesn't say that Ula Bar Kismi was Chayav Misa.
Right.
Yerushalmi says that Ula Bar Kisri was wanted dead or alive by the government. The Rambam took it one step further, and he assumes that whatever his violation was, Ula Bar Kisri, he was guilty even in a Jewish court.
Right.
And therefore, the Kesef Mishna says the Rambam was compelled to paskin like Reish Lakish. We need Chayav Misa Kesheva ben Bir. All right, let's go on. The Ramah in Yeridea codifies everything that we learned until now. Ovdi Kocham Shom Yisrael Tnu Lanu Echad Mikem V'Nargeu. I would ask David if he doesn't mind reading. We're up to 4 bet.
Okay, I just had it on mute. Okay, 4 bet. The Ramah?
Yes.
Ovdei Chachamim Shamu Yisrael Tnu Lanu Echad Mikem V'Nahargenu. Lo yitnu lahem echad mehem ela im ken yicheduhu v'amru tnu lanu ploni. Okay, that's quoted from the Mishnah and Trumas and the Rambam.
And this is Rabbi Yochanan.
Right. V'yesh omrim dafilu b'chay gavna ein lemasro ela im ken chayav misa kesheva ben bichri. That's Reish Lakish. V'chein nashim sha'amru lahen.
So keep in mind. Whereas the Rambam is not Gores, Rabbi Yochanan, doesn't even give you an option. In the Halacha, in the Ramah, it's a Machlokes. And therefore, I would attempt to apply the principle of Safek Nefashos Lahakil by paskening like Rabbi Yochanan, the first opinion in the Ramah, against the Yesh Omer and the Reish Lakish. Think about that. Or let's go on.
Hey, you want me to read the case about the women?
V'chein, yeah.
V'chein nashim she'amru lahen ovdei kochavim tinu lanu achas mikem v'nitameosa yitam'u kulam v'lo yimasru nefesh achas miYisrael. Okay. Go on.
Now, the next piece is not for us now, but let's read it anyway, because it's part of the Ramah.
Kol makom shenemar yehoreg v'ayavor im avar v'lo neherag af al pi shechilul Hashem mikol makom nikra anus upater.
What does that mean,
Got-
potter?
It's still considered an onesh, so you're pater.
No, but what does it mean, potter? Potter me, let's add a word.
Onesh.
Onish, correct. He's potter from all ownership. Even though the halacha required him to give up his life, and he chose his life above the Avera, which he wasn't supposed to do, we cannot punish him. And it sounds like that would even apply to a case of Ritzicha.
So when Gemara says onus Rahmana Patre, that's very precise. Pata of a non-muter.
Right, but the Chiddush is that this is called the onus. You and I would
Right.
have said this is not called the onus. And you remember from our discussions back in Alon Shvut that many Rishonim, including the Ramach, Rav Moshe Cohen, and others, held that this is not onus. He should have had the wits in his mind to make the decision that the Torah demands of him, to give up his life on Kiddush Hashem. That's not onus. He had a choice. He made a bad choice. He knows the repercussions, and he should suffer the punishments. But the Rambam is not like that. And the Ramah here, Haskins like the Rambam, that we cannot subject him to any onshin. Let's just finish it up, because what we want to get to now is the Beis Yosef in Choshe Mishpat.
V'dav keshlo yuchal livroach, aval im yochal livroach ve'eno ose, rehu kekelev shav al kiyo v'nikra over b'mezit.
Right.
So if he could have wiggled himself out of this situation, out of this scenario where he'd have to violate one of the big three, and he failed to do so, that itself transforms the onus into mazid, and we will punish him karoilo. All right, now we get to the Beis Yosef and Choshe Mishpat.
You want me to read?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Haroes chavero tovea b'nahar, or shalistin bayin alav, chayav lahatzilo, bein begufo, bein b'mamono. B'sof perek, that's he's quoting that from the Torah.
And what happened over here?
Someone's in trouble.
Is he able to jump in and save him? Is he a life swimmer? Lifesaver? It depends.
Mistama, yes.
If
Otherwise,
he is, then he's got to jump in. If he's not, he has to hire somebody.
Okay.
Tanya,
B'sof perek ben Sora Tanya minayin l'roes chavero shu tovea b'nahar, chayav gorarto, o listim bayim alav shu chayav lahatzilo, tamid loymar lo tamar adam reyacha. V'ha mehacha nafka mehasam nafka. We have another pasuk. Avedas gufa minayin, tamid loymar v'hashevo solo. So Gemara answers, Di mehasam hava mina hani mili b'nafshei, aval mitrachu meger agure emalo kamash malon.
so let's stop here for a second. How many lavim and how many esim does one violate for not fulfilling his obligation to save someone?
It sounds like one lav and one esa.
Excellent. One lav and one esim. Now, this is on page 2. If you fast forward for a moment, take a look on page 3, 6 Aleph, and we're no longer learning the Rambam in Hilchos Yisodei HaTorah, but rather Rambam in Hilchos Rotzeach. Halacha Tesvav, skipped Halacha Tesvav. I'm doing that deliberately.
Haroa rodef achar chavero lahargo, o achar erva lavala, v'yachol lahatzil v'lo hatzil, hareze bitol mitzvahs aseh, shehi v'katzosa es kappa. V'yavar al shnei lavim, al lo sochos einecha, v'al lo sam od adam reyacha.
Any question? How many lavim?
There was added one.
He added a lav and he added an essay.
Yeah, he has a lav and an essay. I don't know why he drops the ball on the other essay of Hashimosa Lo. Maybe because he's covering two cases, and one case is where her life is not in danger. So therefore, Vashivosa Lo, which means to return someone's guf, that might not apply in the case of Gili Arayas in Ereva. But on the other hand, the Rambam certainly adds another lav here. And we'll have to analyze that. That's going to be the subject of tonight's discussion based on the Radbaz, Rabbeinu David ibn Ezra, who lived in Cairo in Egypt about 5.5 centuries ago.
But sorry, is this a lav shein b'maaseh? They can't kill you.
And we're talking about a lav shein bo ma'aseh. Correct. As I mentioned to you many times, in England, the famous story, reading the Daily Times, mind my own business. The Torah doesn't have that attitude. Okay, now we're up to the top of page 3. And the rush on the second line. Well, let's introduce the rush. What would be your intuitive response, your knee-jerk response to the following question? Ruvain is obligated to save Shimon, even if it's going to cost him the money to hire a lifesaver. Does Ruvain have recourse to sue Shimon for the monies that he spent in order to save Shimon? Can you analyze the two sides of this question? Is the question clear?
If it's a personal mitzvah saseh, you might say that it's his responsibility. So
correct. We're saying that
I can't sue you for the price of my esrog, right?
If it's my chiyuv, I got to do it. Money ahin, money aher. Or should we say no? We derive it from Hashavas Aveda. In Hashavas Aveda, if I spend money to protect your little shepsela, in order to return it, you have to reimburse my outlay. And the Gemara goes on to say in Bav Mekama that if I see your dvash that's about to be spilled, and I have a cod of yayin, and dvash is worth that much more than wine, I have to spill my wine in order to save your dvash. But you will pay me for the spilled wine. And that's what I think the Rush is saying over here. Let's read the Rush. V'hanitzel.
V'hanitzel chayev the froa lamatzil mashahotzi. De'ein adam mechuyev lahatzel nefesh chavero b'mamono hecha de'istei mamono l'nitzel.
I was thinking out loud. They're raising money for the chayalim here and there. Maybe we're obligated. I mean, they're saving our lives. And who knows how much of a loss they're suffering. Financially, even. Forget about physically and psychologically. I mean, it's hard to even imagine. Did you see the clip about the mefaked? How do you say mefaked in English? The commander. You saw it? Where they're all waiting to hear if they can get out. He says, can't let you out tomorrow. But I can let you out today. You see all Bedlam break loose. 25 Chayalim are going crazy. Very cute clip. And it's the real thing. I mean, it's not a fake. Umasha Kesef B'Shem Rambam. Let's go on.
Okay. Umasha Kesef B'Shem Rambam. I'm off here. Okay. Umasha Kesef B'Shem Rambam who beperek Aleph Minchas Rotzeach v'chosvo Rabbeinu b'shvil ma shekasav she'im shama goyim o listim mechashvin olav ra tzarech the galos ozen chavera or the fayes hagoy.
Okay.
Okay. V'chasvu hagos maimonios avar al lo samod. Yerushalmi masig afilu lahachnis atzma b'sofek sakana chayev. Okay, ad kan.
Oh, so here,
V'nira she'ata mipnei shahalo vadai v'hu sofek.
well, let's slow down a little. So what radical chiddush was formulated here by the Agos Maimonides?
That you have to put yourself into a sofek sakana in order to save someone from a vadai sakana.
You want to underline that 3 times. I mean, that's really this whole sugya that we're learning here about risking your life to save others. And according to the Tur, quoting the Agos Maimonios, basing himself on Yerushalmi, one is obligated to put his life at risk in order to save someone else. And what's the logic behind this? What does he say?
There's one sofek and one's vadai.
That's called Ein Safek Motzim Midei Bad. So obviously, we have to draw parameters. What are the 2 parameters that he's drawing? What's going to happen to the Nitzel if you don't save him?
He'll definitely die.
Definitely don't. What's the other parameter?
The matzil is only a sofek.
Correct. The Matzel is not giving up his life to save someone else.
He's exposing himself
You
to
know,
risk.
Roe Klein, that kind of thing. That is not obligatory, even according to this shita of the Tur in the name of the Yerushalmi. But if you're a Suffolk and he's a Vadai, your jumping in may cause your death. Maybe it won't. But one thing's for sure, he's going to die. And he goes on to embellish this with a Mishnah in Sanhedrin. What does it say in that Mishnah, David?
Right.
Now the rest is a blessing. This is the last halacha in the Beis Yosef. He thanks Hashem. What I found interesting about this blessing in thanking Hashem is he adds a little bakasha here. You know, a petition to God after saying how much work he put into this. And then he says, Achilo lakel, achale panecha, she is akeni, she is pashet b'chol Yisrael. That my Torah will be accepted in Kol Yisrael. Laman eya b'chlal matzdiki harabim. The Gemara says about matzdiki harabim, they're like the stars in the heavens. V'yazakeni lechaber od svarim harbe lezakos harabim. And I was very moved by this because very often I say to myself, you know, do you have to pray to Hashem that your Torah should be spread? That's up to the Eibush. That's up to God. You don't have to get into that. If it's not your Torah, it'll be someone else's Torah. Who said that you have to be the Gadol Hador? But apparently it doesn't work that way. It's part of the nefesh to desire to make a contribution, and as great as it could possibly be, and to ask Hashem to grant you that. Okay, let's read the Rambam now, 6 Aleph, and then we'll see how the Kesef Mishna operates with this Rambam. Now, please separate between what I call the Reisha and the Seifa. The Reisha is Halacha Yudalid, and the Seifa is Halacha Tesvav. We already read Halacha Tesvav, and if you fail to save someone, how many lavim do you violate? 2. What are the 2 lavim? Let's go back.
Excellent.
But now let's take a look at Halacha Ydalit. And the Rambam is blowing a different tune.
Kol hayachal lahatzil v'lo hitzil over al lo samo l'adam reyacha. V'chein haroes chavero tovea b'nahar bayam. O listin bayin alav o chaya roa ba'alav v'yachal latzila hu bi'atzmo. O sheyiskor acherim lahatzila v'lo hitzil. O sheshama goyim o mosrim mechashvim alav roa. O tomnin lo pach v'lo gila ozen chavero v'hodiyom. O sheyada begoyo ba'anas shul kovel al chavero v'yachal lefaiso b'glal chavero lahasir masha belibo v'lo fiyaso. V'chol kayotze b'dvarim elu ha'osa osam over al lo samo l'adam reyacha.
How many lavim?
Just one.
One.
Only one. And that's what we saw earlier on page 2. Going on to the top of page 3 in the Beis Yosef for Kesef Mishpat, you violate one law. But yet the Rambam himself in the very next halacha says that you violate 2 laws. The Kesef Mishna adds an essay here to the picture. As we saw in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Vashevosel lo, with the chiddush that you have to spend money if you can't jump in yourself and hire someone to save him. Let's skip now to the Yerushalmi and Trumos. 6 Gimel. Does anybody else want to read? Or David, you're doing a great job, but
Any volunteers in the crowd? I guess not. Okay. So I'll
they
continue.
know
Okay,
how the
Yerushalmi.
Yerushalmi is difficult. This is
Rabbi,
the real
is that,
irony.
is that Rabbi Ami?
Rabbi Imi.
Rabbi Imi, okay. Rabbi Imi istzad b'sifa. He was trapped.
Yeah, they tied him up. In other words, they
okay. Rabbi Yonasan yichkarech hameis b'sadino.
prepare the tachricha.
Wow.
He's a dead man. No way he could survive.
Okay, so Rish Lakish is going to come to the rescue because Rish Lakish once upon a time was a right. He was a violent criminal, right? So I'm Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Ad ana katil, ana miskatil, ana ezel umeshisiv le bechayala. So he wants to go be the hero and rescue him.
He says 1 or 2 things is going to happen.
Either I'll die or I'll save him.
Right.
I mean, either I'll die or he'll die, basically, right?
So what kind of situation are we dealing with?
Sounds like something sakana.
Okay, let's see what Reish Lakish actually did before.
It's kind of like an Antebi situation. Azal ufaison. Oh, so he was mefayis them. V'yahavuni le, and
He
they
gave
gave
him
him.
bakshish. And he saved Rabbi Imi. So what would you say should determine the halacha? Reish Lakish's havamina or his maskana? And where does Rabbi Yonasan fit into the picture? Rabbi Yonasan didn't offer to gather together the troops. Maybe you're right, because he didn't have the power to do so. Okay, I think that's enough for the Yerushalmi for us now. Let's look at the tshuva of the Lublina Rav, and then we get right down to business, and that is the Radbaz. $6.
B'Yerushalmi Pereches de Trumos, Matzina de Reish Lakish Mosar Nafsho LaHatzilas Rav Imi.
So what's Kovea here? Is it the Havamina Reish Lakish or the Maskana?
That's the Havamina.
The Havamina.
Hasan be'emes pligi Rabbi Yonasan Reish Lakish.
Not sure, but he assumes that Rabbi Yonasan would not have accepted this. Yikro Chasadin and Hames Besadino, he's a goner. There's nothing we can do. We can't go in and endanger our lives. You can't go into the lion's den. You know, you've heard stories during the Holocaust of, you know, they took a man's daughter away into the Gestapo, and the father goes into the Gestapo to try to save his daughter. And he's like walking into a death trap. Aval efshel lomar.
Rabbi Yonasan the Amar Yikarech HaMeis Basadino Rotzalamar de Einenu Mechuyavim Lehistake Ach Reish Lakish Avid Midas Chatzidus V'lo Mitzadadin.
Moshe is another case of midas chasidus, but I think you'll
Yeah.
admit that the midas chasidus here works in favor of hatzolas nefashos.
Right.
So maybe you're not obligated to put your life into such danger. And Reish Lakish himself realizes it's 50-50, either I'll defeat him or vice versa. Nevertheless, midas chasidus, and we spoke about the relativity here in the Hachroas Halacha, Reish Lakish jumps into the fray. At the end, he found another option. He tried everything, and lo and behold, he succeeded without having to put his life into danger.
No, but isn't it a bit different? Because here he's putting himself in there. In the case of the other things, you're putting the whole other town. You're sacrificing their lives for this person.
Right.
Yeah, you're sacrificing yourself. But,
Absolutely. That's why I said that Moshe would concede in this particular case that it's midas chasidus. Not in the case where the whole city has to get destroyed, which is the halacha that the Rambam paskin in Yesodei Torah.
right.
The Rambam, as we said, went a step further. He said, halacha vein morin came. The entire rule of Reish Lakish that yichdu v'chayev misa keshev men birchu yimseru lo is not halacha. That's the Rambam. All because Eliyahu Hanavi told Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, I'm gonna show up and reveal myself to you. You're a Moshe. You're no good Moshe. Pella. A lot of things in this sugya just boggle the mind. Well, let's fast forward for a moment to 7 bet. So we're skipping over 7 aleph, which Belina will hope to come back to. Sha'alta mimeni. Can you read that, David?
Sha'alta mimeni odiacha dati b'meshakasav Rambam zal hilchos rotzech shmiras hanefesh perakama de kol hayachal lahatziv v'lo hitzil over alo tamor adam re'echa bekashe lecha chada sharei kasav ze hadin lamata v'su de lamata kasav over al shnei lavim ve'asei shel v'katzos kapa.
So what are the 2 questions of the Radbaz?
Number one, why does he mention the love of Losamud in 2 adjacent passages? Right, he repeats
totally,
it. Right?
It's totally redundant. The Rambam never repeats himself.
And how come the second time he adds the love of Losachos Einecha and the Yaseh of Katzos Kappa?
So what do we need here? A brisket dinu, right? We're going to have to say that halacha yudalid and halacha tesvav are 2 different halachas. But how do we do that? It's all about hatzolah.
And the Radbaz never done by a brisker, so it's a problem.
Well, in this case, I think he's a brisker. Take a look. Page 4. Tshuva.
Ma shekasav Rav Zal kol hayochal lahatzil v'chulei ayri b'mishiyochal lahatzil lehedya below she is stacking hamatzil klal.
Just 1 second, David. I would add halacha yudalid here to the text, just so we have clarity. Masha Kosav, start again. Just add those 2 words.
I'm sorry, what am I reading?
Tshuva. Masha Kosav Rav Zal.
Right.
Just for clarity's sake, add 2 words. Halacha yudalid.
Okay.
And later on, we'll see halacha tesva.
So halacha yudal, the first halacha is Ayri b'mishiyacho lahatzil lehedya below she is stacking hamatzil klal.
Interesting.
So it's not a case of suffix sakana, that there's no sakana involved in saving the person in danger.
Is this not counterintuitive? Which would you say is worse? Who deserves a double violation of 2 lavin?
Right, the one who's not in danger, right?
But it's just fakir. Let's see how he develops it.
Kigon shayayoshen tachas kosa ra'ua shayayachol leha'iro mishnasa v'lo ha'iro. O kigon sheyodea lo edus lahatzilo So in those cases, Avar alo samar adam reyacha. For those who bilvad, el afilu yesh bo ktsas safek sakana. Kagon ra also tovea bayom, or listin bayin alav, or chaya ra sheyesh bechol elu safek sakana, afilu achi chayav lahatzil. ואפילו שלא היה יכול להציל בגופו, לא נפטר בשביל כך, אלא חייב להציל בממונו. ולא זו בלבד דברי הזקי, אלא אפילו שמע עקום וכולי, דלא ברי הזקי.
He's not sure that the goyim are going to really kill the guy.
Right. The dilma mimilchi v'lo avdi, maybe they'll change their mind. So even in that case, where it's not so clear that the guy is going to be killed, afilu hachi chayav lahatzil. V'imlo hitzil over alo samar adam reyacha.
So now he has two chidushim. One chidush is that you violate lo samon in a case where it requires a little bit of a suffix sakana. He calls it ktsas suffix sakana. And chidush number two is that he has to spend his money, otherwise he violates lo samar al dam reyach. Oh, now he comes around to explain the difference between halacha yudalid, where he only violates lo samod, and halacha tesvav, where he violates lo sachus ein chola.
And v'katzoso.
Right.
Ubechol hani lo shayach lo
Again, back
safek.
to halacha yudalid. B'chol hani.
Meaning in all these cases that we just said,
Halacha
lo
yudalid.
shayach lo sachas einecha, shari eino mitzuva lachus al ha'akum. I don't understand.
It's a little complicated here.
Because since it's a goy, so that's why there's no din of those sachos.
So lo sachos applies to a Jew that's meant to get some kind of punishment or something. We say lo tachos.
Exactly.
So you're saying that doesn't apply to the guy. You don't have to worry about if you can hurt the guy by saving. It's like if a Jew is bothering no, then you might have to say, well, maybe I have to worry about lo tachos, so I can't do anything bad against the perpetrator because he's a Jew and I have the issue of lo tachos. Here it's like if the guy is chasing, the lo tachos doesn't apply.
There is a
It's a
voice
goy.
behind the name. Yeah, what he's saying. In all the cases in halacha yudalid, we're not dealing with a challenge that with your hatzalah, we're going to have to lose the life of a Jew because of your hatzalah. It's either a guy, and he heard that the guy is plotting to kill this guy. It's a stone wall that's about to fall. The guy is in a natural disaster zone, where there's a undercurrent. But when that Hatzalah requires that you take the life of a Jew in order to achieve that Hatzalah, the Torah adds another law. Why do you think the Torah needs to add another law?
Because you might be reluctant to kill the Jew.
We had long discussions back in the day about what exactly is a rodef. We even suggested a physical inanimate object might be a rodef. We spoke about a baby. A katan is a rodef. A baby that's screaming, do you remember? Might have the status of a rodef.
And the cargo on the ship.
The cargo on the ship, it's going to weigh down the ship. And in this context, the Torah is really worried. The Torah is saying, I'm telling you to kill the Rodef in order to save the Nirdaf. And you're saying, why should I kill the Rodef? It's not always the case that the Rodef is Chayav Misa. The Torah wants you to kill the Rodef, even if the Rodef is not Chayav Misa. And the Gemara paskins that a Rodef ain't Tzarech Hasra, which might mean that the Rodef is a Shogeg. And the Torah comes up with a whole new set of rules that once we define Ploni as a Rodef, Lo Tachus Einchel, there's no room for mercy. And it's irrelevant whether Rodef is guilty in Chayav Misa or not Chayav Misa. Let's read it inside. I think this Radbaz is a brisker Chiddush. Just that he's 3.5 centuries before Reb Chaim. But
okay, where do we get up to? Okay. Second. Uvechol hani lo shaykh lo sachas einecha shaharei eino mitzuva lachus al ha'akum. Lo shaykh nami v'katzos eskapa shaharei eino mitzuva shlo lechava shalach b'bahem.
So again, you have to always add, when he says Ubechol hani, where is it?
We're still in Halacha Yudalid.
Halacha Yudalid, right? Avol, now we get to Halacha Tesvav.
Aval Yisrael harodef achar chaveru lehargo, o achar ha'erev levoala, v'yochol lahatzil v'lo hitzil. Hareza bitel mitzvahs aseh dichsiv v'katzosa eskapa, v'yavar shnei lavim al lo sachos einecha v'nosaf alav alo samar adam reyacha. Hakodel is kol mi sheyochol lahatzil v'lo hitzil. Because here there's a Jew, so therefore we need the extra tzivuyim of losachos and v'katzosa.
Extra law.
And the Yaseh of
we're not being mafkia. We're not removing the law of lo tamid al dam reyaka. You're chayven atzola, and he might die if you have mercy on the road. But the Torah felt compelled to add another law in the case where the rodef is a Jewish life. Like we said, my chazis, can you kill so and so to save your life? Who says you can forfeit that life for the sake of this life? And if you're a bi-party, you're a third person, why are you going to take this life for the sake of this life? And that's the Gzeres HaKosev of Rodef. That Rodef generates new dinim. And it'll require of you a great deal of psychological effort to overcome your natural tendency to say, why should I kill this guy to save this guy? My chazis. Everyone's blood is equally important in the eyes of the Ribono Shel Olam. So the Torah had to add another lav and another essay. It's almost lahavdil elef avdolos. It's like the mitzvah of Amalek. And the Torah tells us to overcome compassion. The Torah even has to guarantee us that when we destroy Amalek, it's not going to have a permanent impact on our spiritual selves. And all this, I think, is very relevant today. I read an article the other day, maybe I'll send it to you, about a very important head of the Mishtara, who's been in Gaza now for months. And he's talking about the impact of Chil Shabbos on Chayalim Datiyim. Can you imagine you're in a milchama, there's no Shabbos. I mean, you might not even know that today is Shabbos. He has 3 different approaches how to deal with this. Very fascinating. Maybe we should talk about it someday if you're interested. But he says there is, Rav Rimon from Alon Shvut denies it. He says on the contrary, Shmiras Shabbos has become even more important in the eyes of the Chayalim than it ever was. And you find Chilonim, so to speak, pardon the phrase, who are starting to observe the Shabbos. But this head of the Mishtara, forgetting his name right now, it's a complicated name. They have a picture of him in the video. He's saying that he's seeing the impact of Milchama as far as Shabbos is concerned. And it's not good. So when the Torah says destroy life, kill the Rodef, and as we said before, the Rodef might not be Chayev Misa. It's a katan. Lo tochus encha olav. Now let's skip down because we have to end to Vehevi Odea. It's about 3 lines. We're skipping about 3-4 lines.
Yeah, let's try to find it.
The first word in the line is Viargena.
והווי יודע שיש בכלל לאו זה שלא יעמוד על הפסד ממון חברו, אלא שאינו חייב להכניס עצמו לספק סכנה בשביל ממונו.
So here's another Tzvei Dinu. What is the fundamental distinction that the Radbaz is formulating now?
Between saving property and saving life.
In which case, and only in that case, do you have to put your life into danger?
Obviously, when you're saving someone's life.
Right. Okay, now comes the punchline. Everything that we did until now, for I don't know, about a month, David calls it part 4. This is the culmination of all that we did. Let's read it inside.
אבל להציל נפש חברו או שלא יבוא על הערווה אפילו במקום דיקה ספק סכנה חייב להציל. והכי יישא בירושלמי.
And why is Erva so he has a psychological principle that a ma'anes, what might happen is she'll resist,
And then he'll kill her.
and then he'll kill her. Now he's going to put his life into danger. Umikol makol. This you have to underline.
But when he says V'achi Yiseh B'Yerushalmi, is that the story of Reish Lakish? He says V'achi Yiseh
Right,
B'Yerushalmi.
Right. Reish Lakish.
ומקומקום אם הספק נוטה לוודאי אינו חייב למסור עצמו להציל חברו ואפילו בספק מוכרע אינו חייב למסור נפשו דמי חזס דדמה דידך סומך תפי דלמה דמה דידי סומך תפי.
Slow down.
אבל אם הספק
Slow
אינו
down, David.
מוכרע.
Slow down. Slow down.
Okay, sorry.
On a
So if
scale,
it's almost definite you'll be killed, then you don't have to give your life.
on a scale from 0 to 100, what is the percentage, if we use statistical probability, that he will die because the suffix is nota el avadai. Nota el avadai means it turns the corner. What number am I looking for?
85.
51%.
Ah,
Eino chayav limsar atzma. What's afilu suffix muchra? 50-50. Eino chayav limsar nafsha. Aval, next to the last line.
אם הספק אינו מוכרע אלא נוטה אל ההצלה, meaning so most likely you won't die.
Where's the 51% now?
51% chances you'll survive. ולא יסתכן. So then ולא הציל, then over alo sam al damre.
Pile plug. Now we have to go now, but first of all, I want to thank you, David, because my voice, as you know, is going on me. I don't know if it's a cold or a flu. I don't know what it is. I get chills. I take Acamol. I take this. I take that.
Everyone's sick. Everyone's been sick recently.
Yeah. It impacts on my morning, on my evening, on my Zoom, on my Daf Yomi. It's like, but I wanted to just add one point here. When I was researching, not for myself, I'm not going to claim I'm such a great guy, and I would be willing to do this, but I was researching the idea of kidney donors. And the question about whether or not you can donate a kidney, one of your two kidneys. Somehow the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us two kidneys, and generally speaking, we could survive on one.
My wife donated a kidney.
Wow. I just hope, I shouldn't say this out loud. I just hope it didn't go to a terrorist, that's all. Anyway.
No, we know who went to. He's a good guy.
Okay, good. Because, we live in a crazy country here. Crazy. Anyway, and I only know this from my son, Baruch, who's a doctor. But getting back to my question here, so many of the poskim say the following, that if it's not considered a sakana, then you're allowed. If it's a sakana, you're not allowed. Doesn't sound like the Radbaz, but more than that, when I researched it, because the question is what constitutes a sakana, so they quote Reb Meir Simcha Midvinsk regarding childbirth. And a woman is considered in suffix sakana when she gives birth. Every woman. As I state in Reb Meir Simcha. So the poskim calculate, listen to this, that sakana is about 16%. Which is, I think, 1/7. Did I get that right? Somebody do a quick math. How many times does 7 go into 100?
14 times 7 is 98, right?
If you multiply 16 by x, you'll get 100. Well, what is the x?
So 100 divided by 16.
1/7 is about 14%.
Okay, so I don't remember exactly the number, but that's what they came up with rayas from here and there and elsewhere. And I posit the following question. The Radbaz seems to talk about 50%, 49%, or 51%. So I want to donate a kidney to save someone's life, but I'm not allowed to put my life into danger. And if 16 out of 100 people, chas v'sholom, who donate kidneys would die, then I'm not allowed to donate a kidney. And here, the Radbaz formulates it in terms of 51 versus 49%. I leave you with that thought question.
I'm sorry, isn't there a Radbaz who says about your Ivarim also?
I can't hear you. There's a lot of background. You what?
The Ivarim, if you lose an arm, you're allowed to not
that's
say.
the part of the Radbaz I skipped.
Okay.
Would you be obligated to allow the goyim to cut off a limb of yours in order to save another Jew? That's the part of the Radbaz. Okay, Rabbosai.
Well, sorry. So in this context, a hostage can be a write-off. That's what you want to do.
I didn't say it. I'm glad you said it. Because if I say it, they'll call me, I don't know.
So
I don't
take
know.
up the tape. Yeah, right.
Cold, cold and emotionless. And you're not no sevil chavero. I'm speaking Bezer Hashem and Askara for a Talmud in Shalavim who fell. His father was a Talmud of mine way back when. He's about your age, probably. The father, I'm saying. And in the yeshiva that I teach in, there's a picture of another chayal that fell. I mean, the most beautiful. So many questions I have on the war. I don't know. And it's just very, very difficult. Yeah. Sometimes I just can't sleep at night. Right? And that's not helping anybody. Just making me more sick.
I feel good.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so glad Rav Rimon sees the positive here. Oh,